The Trojan War, a story of love, war, and destiny. Paris, a prince of Troy, steals Helen, the most beautiful woman in the world, from her husband Menelaus, king of Sparta. Menelaus, enraged, calls upon his brother Agamemnon, king of Mycenae, to help him wage war against Troy. The Greeks, led by Achilles, lay siege to Troy for 10 long years. Finally, they trick the Trojans with the infamous Trojan horse and sack the city, ending the war. The heroes of the Trojan War, Achilles, Hector, Odysseus, are some of the most enduring figures in all of literature. Their stories have inspired countless works of art, music, and literature. But what is the truth behind the legend? The Trojan War is a story that has been passed down through generations. It was first recorded by the Greek poet Homer in his epic poems, and Homer's poems are works of literature, not history. However, there is some evidence to suggest that the Trojan War may have actually happened. Archaeologists have uncovered the ruins of a city in modern-day Turkey that they believe to be the site of ancient Troy. The city was destroyed by fire around the same time that the Trojan War is said to have taken place. While there is no definitive proof, the evidence suggests that there may be some truth to the legend. The search for the truth about the Trojan War has been going on for centuries. In recent years, archaeologists have made some startling discoveries that have shed new light on the Trojan War. In the late 19th century, a German archaeologist named Heinrich Schliemann excavated a site in Turkey that he believed to be the city of Troy. Schliemann's discoveries caused a sensation, reigniting interest in the Trojan War. However, Schliemann's methods were often criticized as being too destructive. In the 20th century, archaeologists began to use more scientific methods to excavate the site of Troy. These excavations have revealed a much more complex picture of the city than Schliemann ever imagined. Whether a myth or a historical event, the Trojan War continues to fascinate and inspire people around the world. The most famous explanation for the Trojan War is the judgment of Paris. According to Greek myth, the goddess Eris was not invited to the wedding of Peleus and Thetis. Insulted, Eris threw a golden apple into the wedding feast, inscribed with the words, "To the fairest." 3 goddesses, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, each claimed the apple for herself. Zeus appointed Paris, a prince of Troy, to be the judge. Each goddess offered Paris a bribe. Hera offered power, Athena offered wisdom, and Aphrodite offered the love of the most beautiful woman in the world. Paris chose Aphrodite, leading to the abduction of Helen and the eventual Trojan War. The abduction of Helen is a key event in Greek mythology. It sets in motion the Trojan War, a 10-year conflict that pits the Greeks against the Trojans. But what really happened? Was Helen abducted against her will, or did she run away with Paris willingly? In some versions, Helen is abducted by Paris while her husband Menelaus is away from home. In other versions, Helen runs away with Paris willingly after being seduced by him. The truth is, we will probably never know for sure what really happened. The story of the abduction of Helen is a myth, and myths are often based on real events but embellished over time. It is a story about the destructive power of love, the importance of loyalty, and the futility of war. It is a story that continues to resonate with us today. The Trojan War is a story of gods and monsters, of heroes and villains. The gods of Greek mythology are powerful and often petty deities who are just as likely to help as they are to hinder. The gods play a significant role in the Trojan War. Aphrodite supports the Trojans because Paris chose her as the fairest goddess. Hera and Athena side with the Greeks because they were passed over by Paris. Throughout the war, the gods intervene in the battles, influencing the outcome of duels and even resurrecting fallen warriors. The gods' involvement adds an element of unpredictability to the war, as the mortals on both sides are at the mercy of their whims and rivalries. The war becomes a microcosm of the conflicts and alliances among the gods. Helen of Troy is known as the face that launched 1,000 ships. She is considered the most beautiful woman in the world, so beautiful that her abduction sparked a 10-year war. But who was Helen? Was she a real person, or is she just a myth? There is no historical evidence to suggest that Helen was a real person. She is first mentioned in Homer's, which was written centuries after the Trojan War is said to have taken place. Whatever the case may be, Helen of Troy has become an archetype of beauty and desire. Her story has been told and retold for centuries, and she continues to fascinate and inspire us today. To understand the origins of the Trojan War, it's essential to delve into the complicated history of the House of Atreus. The House of Atreus was cursed by the gods, and its members were plagued by tragedy, violence, and betrayal. This curse stemmed from the actions of Tantalus, the founder of the house. He committed horrific crimes, including murdering his own son and serving his flesh to the gods. The curse continued to haunt the family through generations, leading to a cycle of murder, revenge, and misfortune. The weight of this curse hangs over the events of the Trojan War, adding a layer of inevitability and tragedy to the story. Agamemnon, driven by a desire to avenge his family's honor, rallies the Greeks to war, but his own actions ultimately lead to further tragedy and bloodshed. Helen, renowned for her beauty, had numerous suitors vying for her hand in marriage. To avoid potential strife, her father Tyndareus made all of Helen's suitors swear a binding oath. This oath, known as the Oath of Tyndareus, bound the suitors to defend the chosen husband and Helen from any threat or harm. When Paris, the Prince of Troy, abducted Helen Menelaus, her husband, invoked the Oath of Tyndareus. This call to arms obligated all the former suitors to honor their pledge and join Menelaus in his quest to reclaim his wife and punish Troy. The Oath of Tyndareus highlights the importance of oaths and alliances in ancient Greek society. The oath served as a powerful tool for maintaining order and stability within Greek society. Responding to Menelaus' call to arms, Agamemnon, the king of Mycenae, took on the monumental task of assembling the Greek forces. He sent emissaries to every corner of the Greek world, summoning the former suitors of Helen and their armies to fulfill their oath. The Greek army was a coalition of independent armies, each led by its own king or hero. Among the most famous Greek heroes who answered the call were Achilles, Odysseus, and Ajax the Great. The gathering of the Greek forces at Aulis, the designated meeting point, was not without its challenges. Delays, disagreements, and even divine intervention tested the Greeks' resolve. Despite their differences and the obstacles they faced, the Greeks were ultimately united in their desire to avenge the abduction of Helen and bring her back to Greece. While the abduction of Helen and the oath sworn by her suitors are central to the Greek perspective of the Trojan War, the Trojans themselves likely viewed the conflict differently. From their standpoint, the war was an unprovoked act of aggression by the Greeks, an invasion of their homeland fueled by greed and a desire for power. The Trojans, led by King Priam and his sons, including the noble Hector, were fiercely independent and protective of their city. They had built a flourishing civilization renowned for its wealth and trade, and they were determined to defend their way of life against the invading Greek forces. The Trojans saw Helen's presence in Troy not as a cause for war, but as a matter of personal choice. They accepted her into their city, believing that she had come willingly with Paris. The Trojans viewed the Greeks' insistence on her return as a thinly veiled excuse for conquest and plunder. They were prepared to fight fiercely to protect their city, their families, and their honor. The Trojan perspective reminds us that history is often told from the victor's point of view. It challenges us to consider the perspectives of all sides involved in a conflict and to recognize that there are often multiple narratives and interpretations of historical events. Beyond the mythological explanations for the Trojan War, economic factors likely played a significant role in the conflict. Ancient Troy was strategically located at the entrance to the Hellespont, a narrow strait that controlled access to the Black Sea and its surrounding regions. This strategic location made Troy a major trading hub, controlling the flow of goods, resources, and wealth between the Aegean Sea and the Black Sea. The Trojans had grown wealthy from taxing and controlling this trade, which likely bred resentment among the Greeks, particularly the Mycenaeans, who were also a major maritime power. The Mycenaeans, eager to expand their influence and control over trade routes, may have viewed Troy's dominance as an obstacle to their ambitions. The Trojan War, from this perspective, can be seen as a conflict over economic interests and control of vital trade routes. The Greeks, led by the ambitious Mycenaeans, may have sought to eliminate Troy as a rival and establish their dominance in the region. The abduction of Helen, while serving as a catalyst for the war, might have been a convenient pretext for a conflict that was already brewing due to economic tensions. The economic factors underlying the Trojan War highlight the importance of trade and resources in shaping ancient conflicts. Control over strategic locations and trade routes was crucial for the prosperity and power of ancient civilizations, and competition over these resources often led to conflict and warfare. The city of Troy itself is central to understanding the Trojan War. Located in modern-day Turkey, Troy was a real city that existed centuries ago. Archaeological excavations have revealed a complex and sophisticated civilization that flourished in the late Bronze Age. The city was fortified with massive walls and strategically located for trade, making it a formidable power in the region. Homer's descriptions of Troy in the paint a vivid picture of a wealthy and powerful city with grand palaces, temples, and bustling marketplaces. Archaeological findings have corroborated some of these descriptions, revealing evidence of a sophisticated urban center with advanced engineering and craftsmanship. The city's strategic location and its evident wealth made it a desirable target for conquest, which further supports the theory that economic factors played a role in the Trojan War. The discovery of the ruins of Troy in the 19th century by Heinrich Schliemann provided tangible evidence that the city was not just a figment of myth, but a real place with a rich history. Ongoing archaeological investigations continue to shed light on the Trojan civilization, its culture, and the events surrounding the Trojan War. The city of Troy, both in its mythical and historical context, serves as a reminder that truth and legend are often intertwined. The Trojan War, while steeped in mythology, likely had its roots in real historical events, driven by a complex interplay of personal motivations, political ambitions, and economic interests. The Achaean fleet, 1,000 ships strong, sailed across the Aegean Sea, carrying with them the wrath of the Greeks. Led by Agamemnon, the king of Mycenae, they landed on the shores of Troy, their arrival marking the beginning of a conflict that would echo through the ages. The Trojans, taken somewhat by surprise at the sheer scale of the invasion, had nevertheless prepared for the possibility of a Greek landing. The Trojan army, led by Hector, Priam's eldest and most formidable son, met the Achaeans on the battlefield. The clash of bronze against bronze, the cries of the wounded, and the fury of the warriors painted a scene of chaotic violence. The first battle was a fierce and bloody affair, each side fighting with the courage and desperation that came with defending one's homeland or avenging a perceived injustice. The Achaeans, with their superior numbers, pushed inland, their initial objective being the establishment of a secure beachhead. The Trojans, fighting for every inch of their sacred soil, resisted with valor and tactical skill. The first battle, though inconclusive in terms of a clear victor, set the stage for the long and arduous siege that would follow, a siege that would test the limits of human endurance, cunning, and brutality. The initial clash between the Achaeans and the Trojans, though a mere prelude to the greater conflict, established the tone for the war. It was a conflict not just of armies and kings, but of ideologies and civilizations, a clash between East and West, a battle for honor, power, and the very soul of two proud nations locked in a deadly embrace. The initial clash gave way to a protracted siege, one that would last for 10 long years. The Achaeans, unable to breach the formidable walls of Troy, resorted to a war of attrition. They blockaded the city from the sea, cutting off vital supply lines and raiding inland settlements for food and resources. The Trojans, safe behind their city walls, were nevertheless trapped, their movements restricted, their resources dwindling with each passing day. Life during the siege was harsh for both sides. The Achaean camp, though well supplied by their ships, was plagued by disease, boredom, and the constant threat of Trojan counterattacks. The Trojans, their city slowly being starved into submission, endured dwindling rations, the constant fear of attack, and the agonizing uncertainty of their fate. The siege was not merely a military endeavor, it was a battle of wills, a test of endurance and resolve. The Achaeans, despite their initial enthusiasm, began to question the cost of the war. The Trojans, though facing starvation and despair, clung to the hope of eventual victory, their spirits bolstered by the bravery of their warriors and the leadership of Hector. The siege of Troy is a testament to the horrors of war. the way it grinds down the human spirit, turning hope into despair and courage into a weary acceptance of suffering. It is a reminder that victory, when it comes at such a cost, can feel like a hollow triumph, a Pyrrhic victory achieved at the expense of countless lives and untold suffering. Achilles, the greatest of the Achaean warriors, was a man of contradictions, a fierce fighter with a noble heart, driven by an unyielding sense of honor and a volatile temper. When Agamemnon, in a display of arrogance and short-sightedness, humiliated Achilles by taking Briseis, a woman he had rightfully claimed as a spoil of war, Achilles withdrew from the fighting, his wrath shaking the very foundations of the Achaean army. The impact of Achilles' absence was immediate and devastating. The Trojans, emboldened by the absence of the Achaeans' most fearsome warrior, surged forward, led by the valiant Hector. The Achaeans, demoralized and lacking their champion's leadership, suffered heavy losses, their hopes of a swift victory dashed against the unyielding spirit of the Trojans, now invigorated by the god of war, Ares himself. The Achaeans, facing defeat after defeat, pleaded with Achilles to return, but he remained unmoved, his anger a raging inferno that consumed his reason. He seemed indifferent to the plight of his comrades, more concerned with his wounded pride than the fate of the war effort. His wrath, born of a personal slight, had tipped the scales of the war, giving the Trojans a much-needed advantage. The wrath of Achilles is a powerful reminder that even the greatest of heroes are flawed individuals, driven by emotions and desires that can cloud their judgment and have devastating consequences. It highlights the destructive nature of pride and the importance of humility and forgiveness, even in the midst of war. With the Achaean forces reeling from Trojan advances, a glimmer of hope emerged from the chaos. Paris, spurred on by Hector's rebukes and perhaps a flicker of guilt for his role in the devastating war, challenged Menelaus to single combat. The prize, Helen herself. The victor would claim Helen, and the war would end, sparing further bloodshed and bringing a swift resolution to the decade-long conflict. Menelaus, eager to reclaim his wife and avenge his honor, readily accepted the challenge. The two armies, weary of the endless bloodshed, agreed to a truce, their collective gazes fixed upon the two figures facing each other on the battlefield. The duel was as much a symbolic clash as a physical one, a contest between two men, each representing the hopes and grievances of their respective nations. The duel, however, did not go as planned. Menelaus, fueled by righteous fury and years of pent-up frustration, quickly gained the upper hand, disarming Paris and nearly ending the war with a single blow. Yet Aphrodite, the goddess who had promised Paris the love of Helen, intervened, whisking the Trojan prince away from certain death in a cloud of mist and spiriting him back to the safety of Troy's walls. The duel of Paris and Menelaus, though intended to bring a swift end to the war, ultimately served only to prolong the conflict. The gods, meddling in the affairs of mortals, had once again intervened, preventing a decisive outcome and ensuring that the bloodshed would continue. The fleeting hope of a peaceful resolution evaporated, leaving behind a bitter taste of what might have been. With the duel inconclusive and Achilles still consumed by his wrath, the tide of war continued to turn in favor of the Trojans. Hector, emboldened by his victories and the favor of the gods, pushed the Achaeans back to their ships, threatening to burn their fleet and strand them on the shores of Troy. The Achaeans, facing utter defeat, despaired, their cries for their absent champion echoing unanswered. Patroclus, Achilles' closest companion, filled with grief at the plight of his comrades and driven by a desperate hope to sway Achilles, pleaded with his friend to let him lead the Myrmidons, Achilles' fierce warriors, into battle. He argued that their presence alone, even without Achilles, would bolster the Achaean spirits and stem the Trojan advance. Achilles, his heart softened by Patroclus' pleas and his concern for his comrades overriding his own anger, agreed. He gave Patroclus his armor, hoping that his fearsome reputation would be enough to turn the tide. Patroclus, clad in the armor of Achilles, led the Myrmidons into battle, his courage and skill inspiring the beleaguered Achaeans. However, Patroclus' victory was short-lived. Driven by a desire for glory and mistaking him for Achilles, Hector challenged Patroclus to single combat. The duel was fierce, but Patroclus, though a skilled warrior, was no match for Hector, aided by the god Apollo. Hector, guided by fate and divine intervention, struck Patroclus down, sending a wave of grief and rage through the Achaean ranks. Trojan War was not merely a conflict between mortals. It was a battleground for the gods themselves, their divine interventions shaping the course of the war and influencing the fates of the heroes on both sides. The Olympian gods, far from being impartial observers, took sides in the conflict, their allegiances driven by personal relationships, ancient grudges, and a constant thirst for power and glory. The intervention of the gods added a layer of complexity and unpredictability to the war. Mortals, despite their bravery and skill, were often reduced to pawns in the divine games played out on the plains of Troy. Victories could be snatched away in an instant by a god's favor, and seemingly insignificant events could have far-reaching consequences due to divine manipulation. The gods' involvement in the Trojan War reflected their own complex relationships and power dynamics. Alliances shifted, betrayals were commonplace, and even the most powerful deities were bound by fate and the will of Zeus, the king of the gods. The war became a stage for the gods to display their powers, settle their disputes, and assert their dominance over both mortals and each other. The presence of the gods in the Trojan War highlights the importance of the divine realm in the lives of the ancient Greeks. The gods were not distant entities, but active participants in the human world, their actions shaping the destiny of individuals and nations alike. The Trojan War, with its epic battles and tragic heroes, becomes a testament to the enduring power of the gods and their influence on the course of human history. Aphrodite, the goddess of love, beauty, and desire, played a pivotal role in igniting the flames of war. It was her promise to Paris, offering him the love of the most beautiful woman in the world, that led to the abduction of Helen and the ensuing conflict. Aphrodite's actions, driven by vanity and a desire to see her chosen favorite triumph, set in motion a chain of events that would have catastrophic consequences for both Greeks and Trojans. Throughout the war, Aphrodite remained a staunch supporter of the Trojans, using her powers to protect her favorites and hinder the Greeks. She shielded Paris from harm on the battlefield, whisking him away from certain death at the hands of Menelaus and ensuring his survival despite his lack of martial prowess. Her interventions, often subtle but always impactful, tipped the scales in favor of the Trojans, prolonging the conflict and fueling the cycle of violence. Aphrodite's influence extended beyond the battlefield. She was a master of manipulation, using her powers of seduction and persuasion to influence the hearts of men and gods alike. She sowed discord among the Greeks, playing on their desires and rivalries to weaken their resolve. Her presence in the war was a constant reminder that love, while a powerful force, could also be a destructive one, capable of toppling empires and shattering lives. Aphrodite's role in the Trojan War highlights the duality of love and beauty. They can be sources of joy and inspiration, but they can also lead to jealousy, obsession, and ultimately destruction. Aphrodite's actions serve as a cautionary tale about the seductive and dangerous nature of desire and the unintended consequences of pursuing it at all costs. Hera and Athena, the queen and the warrior goddess, stood in staunch opposition to Aphrodite and the Trojans. Their wrath, ignited by Paris's rejection in the judgment of Paris, fueled their determination to see Troy destroyed and their chosen heroes, the Greeks, emerge victorious. Their interventions were often direct and decisive, reflecting their roles as powerful and strategic deities. Hera, known for her regal bearing and unwavering sense of justice, used her influence over the natural world to aid the Greeks. She commanded the winds and waves, sending storms to scatter the Trojan fleet and hinder their movements. She conspired with other gods, forging alliances and manipulating events to ensure the Trojans' downfall. Her anger, though cold and calculating, was a force to be reckoned with, a testament to the fury of a scorned queen. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, strategy and warfare, favored the Greeks with her tactical brilliance and unwavering support on the battlefield. She inspired their heroes, whispering words of encouragement and guidance in the heat of battle. She bestowed upon them courage, strength, and cunning, enabling them to overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. Her presence on the battlefield was a beacon of hope for the Greeks, a symbol of their eventual triumph over the Trojans. Hera and Athena, despite their different domains, were united in their desire for vengeance against Troy. Their actions throughout the war demonstrated the power of female strength and determination, their strategic brilliance and unwavering resolve ultimately contributing to the Greeks' victory and the fulfillment of their shared goal. Apollo, the god of music, poetry, light, and prophecy, played a more complex role in the Trojan War. While his allegiances might have seemed ambiguous at times, his interventions often proved crucial in shaping the course of the conflict. He was a protector of Troy, his divine arrows capable of turning the tide of battle, yet he also respected the strength and courage of certain Greek heroes. Apollo's loyalty to Troy stemmed from his connection to the city and its people. He had helped King Laomedon build the impenetrable walls of Troy, and he maintained a protective presence over the city. When the Greeks besieged Troy, Apollo unleashed his wrath, raining down plagues upon their camp and weakening their forces. His arrows, swift and deadly, found their marks with unnerving accuracy, striking down Greek heroes and sowing fear among their ranks. Despite his support for the Trojans, Apollo also recognized the heroism and tragic fate of certain Greek figures. He guided the arrow that fatally wounded Achilles, fulfilling the prophecy of the hero's early death. However, he did so with a sense of sorrow, recognizing the waste of such a great warrior. His actions highlighted the tragic nature of war, where even the most valiant heroes could be struck down by fate and the will of the gods. Apollo's role in the Trojan War embodied the complexities of the divine realm. He represented both the destructive and the protective aspects of the gods, their capacity for both wrath and mercy. His actions, often shrouded in mystery and driven by prophecies beyond mortal comprehension, served as a reminder that even the gods were bound by a greater cosmic order. The fall of Troy after a decade of relentless siege was not a moment of triumphant celebration for the victorious Greeks. It was a brutal and chaotic affair, a maelstrom of violence, despair, and the shattering of lives and legacies. The once proud city, its magnificent walls breached, its streets flowing with the blood of its defenders, echoed with the screams of the vanquished and the triumphant roars of the victors. The Greeks, their long years of frustration and bloodshed culminating in this final confrontation, showed little mercy to the defeated Trojans. Driven by a thirst for vengeance, fueled by years of accumulated anger and grief, they rampaged through the city, their swords leaving a trail of carnage in their wake. Homes were looted and burned, temples desecrated, and the cries of innocent civilians mingled with the clash of steel and the roar of flames. The Trojan royal family, once symbols of power and prosperity, met tragic ends. Priam, the aged king, was slain before the altar of his own gods, his pleas for mercy ignored in the heat of the moment. Hector's infant son, Astyanax, was hurled from the city walls, a chilling symbol of the Achaeans' determination to eradicate any trace of Trojan lineage. The sack of Troy stands as a stark reminder of the brutal realities of ancient warfare. It is a testament to the savagery that can be unleashed in the throes of victory, the way that even the most disciplined armies can descend into chaos and barbarity when the bonds of restraint are broken. The fall of Troy, though a victory for the Greeks, came at a heavy price, leaving behind a legacy of pain, destruction, and the haunting spectre of vengeance. The few Trojans who survived the city's destruction faced a bleak and uncertain future. Some were taken as slaves, their lives forever altered by the trauma of defeat and subjugation. Others, scattered by the winds of war, wandered the known world, seeking refuge in distant lands, their hopes of returning to their homeland dashed against the rocks of fate. Aeneas, a Trojan prince and a survivor of the city's fall, is said to have led a group of refugees on a perilous journey to find a new home. His travels, recounted in Virgil's epic poem, the Aeneid, took him across the Mediterranean, facing storms, treacherous enemies, and the wrath of the gods. Aeneas' journey, fraught with danger and driven by a sense of destiny, would eventually lead him to Italy, where he would lay the foundation for the Roman people. Helen, the woman whose beauty had sparked the conflict, faced an equally uncertain fate. Some accounts depict her returning to Sparta with Menelaus, her past transgressions forgiven or forgotten. Others paint a darker picture, with Helen facing the wrath of the Greeks or even being sacrificed to appease the gods. Her story, much like that of Troy itself, became shrouded in myth and legend, her true fate lost to the mists of time. The fate of the Trojans serves as a poignant reminder of the enduring impact of war and conquest. Their story highlights the displacement, suffering, and loss of identity that often accompany such cataclysmic events. The scattering of the Trojan people, their once proud civilization reduced to ruins, serves as a cautionary tale about the fragility of human endeavors and the enduring consequences of conflict. The victorious Greeks, their ships laden with the spoils of war, set sail for home, eager to return to their families and reclaim the lives they had left behind a decade earlier. Their journey, however, proved to be far from straightforward. The gods, their anger stoked by the Greeks' actions during the sack of Troy, unleashed storms and hardships upon the returning fleet, testing their resolve and reminding them that even victors are not immune to divine retribution. Agamemnon, the once mighty king of Mycenae, returned home to find his kingdom in turmoil. His wife, Clytemnestra, driven to madness by grief over the sacrifice of their daughter Iphigenia, and fueled by years of resentment, had taken a lover and plotted against her husband. Upon his arrival, Agamemnon was murdered, his death a chilling reminder that the cycle of violence, once set in motion, is difficult to break. Menelaus, his long quest to reclaim Helen finally over, faced a different kind of challenge. The reunion with his wife was bittersweet, their past marked by betrayal and the lingering shadow of the war. Their journey back to Sparta was fraught with delays and divine interventions, a testament to the gods' lingering displeasure. The return of the Greeks highlights the enduring consequences of war, even for those who emerge victorious. Their experiences serve as a reminder that victory on the battlefield does not guarantee peace or happiness at home. The scars of war, both physical and emotional, lingered, shaping their destinies and reminding them that the true cost of conflict often extends far beyond the battlefield. Amidst the tales of tragedy and despair that followed the Trojan War, a glimmer of hope emerges from the ashes of destruction. The legend of Aeneas, the Trojan prince who escaped the fallen city, has resonated throughout history. His journey, fraught with peril and guided by fate, would ultimately lead to the founding of Rome. Aeneas' journey culminated in his arrival in Italy, laying the groundwork for the Roman civilization. The legend of Aeneas provided the Romans with a powerful origin story, linking their empire to the heroes of the Trojan War. The story of Aeneas became a cornerstone of Roman identity and a testament to the enduring power of myth. While Aeneas journeyed to establish a new home for his people, Odysseus, the cunning king of Ithaca, faced his own arduous and perilous journey home. His 10-year Odyssey, recounted in Homer's epic poem of the same name, is a tale of adventure, hardship, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Odysseus' journey was fraught with challenges and temptations. He encountered mythical creatures, including the one-eyed Cyclops Polyphemus, the seductive Sirens, and the monstrous Scylla and Charybdis. He navigated treacherous waters, endured storms, and faced the wrath of the gods, particularly Poseidon, whose anger he had incurred during the Trojan War. Throughout his trials, Odysseus relied on his cunning, his eloquence, and his unwavering determination to return home to his wife Penelope and his son Telemachus. He faced each obstacle with a mix of courage and guile, outwitting his enemies, escaping from perilous situations, and ultimately proving himself worthy of the favor of the gods. Odysseus' return to Ithaca, however, was not a triumphant homecoming. He found his palace overrun with suitors vying for Penelope's hand in marriage, believing him to be dead. Odysseus, disguised as a beggar, used his wits and his skills as an archer to defeat the suitors and reclaim his rightful place as king. The Odyssey, much like the Iliad, explores themes of heroism, fate, and the relationship between humans and the gods. Odysseus' journey, a testament to the power of perseverance and the enduring bonds of family and homeland, has captivated audiences for centuries, inspiring countless adaptations, interpretations, and explorations of the human condition. The Trojan War, with its compelling characters, epic battles, and timeless themes, has captivated the human imagination for millennia. Its stories, passed down through generations, have been immortalized in literature, art, music, and drama, each retelling offering new perspectives and interpretations of this pivotal event in Western consciousness. Homer's epic poems, the Iliad and the Odyssey, stand as the foundational texts for our understanding of the Trojan War. Their vivid descriptions of battles, heroes, and gods have inspired countless artists and writers throughout history. From ancient Greek vases depicting scenes from the war to Renaissance paintings capturing the drama of the Trojan horse, the visual arts have found endless inspiration in these timeless tales. The Trojan War has also been a rich source of inspiration for playwrights and composers. Euripides' The Trojan Women, a powerful anti-war play, explores the suffering of women and children caught in the crossfire of conflict. Hector Berlioz's opera Les Troyens, a grand and tragic work, captures the epic scope and emotional intensity of the war's final days. The enduring legacy of the Trojan War in literature and art is a testament to the power of these stories to transcend time and culture. The themes of love, loss, revenge, and the fickle nature of fate continue to resonate with audiences today, reminding us of the enduring power of myth and the human capacity for both great heroism and profound tragedy. The Trojan War explores universal themes that resonate today. Love, loss, revenge, fate, and the human-divine relationship offer timeless insights into the human condition. Love drives the conflict from Paris and Helen's passion to Hector and Andromachus' tender bond. Loss permeates the war, with countless deaths and the destruction of Troy. Revenge fuels the cycle of violence, highlighting its destructive nature. Fate shapes destinies, with prophecies and predetermined events. The Trojan War reflects on love, loss, revenge, and fate, offering timeless insights into the human experience. The Trojan War, though an ancient conflict, continues to captivate the modern imagination. Its stories, characters, and themes have been adapted, reinterpreted, and reimagined in countless books, films, television shows, video games, and other forms of popular culture. Modern adaptations of the Trojan War often explore the psychological complexities of the characters, delving into their motivations, desires, and inner conflicts. Films like Troy and Helen of Troy offer visually stunning interpretations of the war, while television series like Atlantis weave elements of the Trojan War into their narratives. The Trojan War also continues to inspire contemporary writers. Margaret Atwood's The Penelopiad retells the story of the Trojan War from Penelope's perspective, giving voice to a character often relegated to the sidelines in traditional accounts. Madeline Miller's The Song of Achilles explores the relationship between Achilles and Patroclus, offering a poignant and lyrical reimagining of their bond. The enduring appeal of the Trojan War in the modern imagination speaks to the timeless nature of its themes and the enduring power of its stories. These tales of love, loss, revenge, and fate continue to resonate with audiences today, offering insights into the human condition and reminding us of the enduring legacy of this ancient conflict. The Trojan War, though a distant echo from the past, remains a vital part of our cultural heritage, its stories continuing to inspire, challenge, and captivate us. The sands of time have long since buried the city of Troy, yet its memory endures, etched in myth, whispered in poetry, and debated in the halls of academia. The Trojan War, a conflict that may have lasted a decade or spanned generations, continues to fascinate us. Its heroes and villains, its loves and losses, a source of endless intrigue. Why does this ancient conflict, shrouded in the mists of time and legend, continue to hold such sway over our collective imagination? Perhaps it is the sheer scale of the story, the clash of civilizations, the catalogue of heroes, both Greek and Trojan, whose names resonate through history. Achilles, Hector, Odysseus, Ajax, Priam, Helen, their deeds, their triumphs, and their tragedies speak to something primal within us, echoing the eternal struggles of humanity. Or maybe it is the enduring power of the myths themselves, the tales of gods and monsters, of love and betrayal, of fate and free will that continue to fascinate us. The Trojan War is a tapestry woven from these timeless threads, a narrative rich in symbolism, allegory, and psychological depth. Whatever the reason, Troy's allure remains undiminished. It beckons us to explore its ruins, both literal and metaphorical, to sift through the layers of myth and history, seeking glimpses of truth, understanding, and perhaps even a reflection of ourselves in the heroes and villains who walk its battlements. Was the Trojan War a historical event or a work of fiction? The answer, much like the ruins of Troy itself, is fragmented, open to interpretation, a puzzle with missing pieces. Archaeological evidence confirms the existence of a powerful city in the region of Troy, a city that experienced periods of warfare and destruction. Yet the epic battles, the divine interventions, the larger-than-life heroes of Homer's poems blur the lines between reality and myth. Did a single woman's beauty truly spark a decade-long war, or did the conflict have deeper, more complex roots, economic rivalries, territorial ambitions, the clash of cultures and ideologies? The Trojan War, as presented in its myriad forms, likely draws from a kernel of historical truth, embellished and reshaped over centuries of oral tradition and poetic license. It is tempting to disentangle myth from history, to seek a definitive and irrefutable account of what truly transpired on those windswept plains. Yet perhaps the true value of the Trojan War lies in its ambiguity, in its blending of fact and fiction. It challenges us to consider the nature of history itself, to acknowledge that even the most well-documented events are often filtered through the lens of perspective, interpretation, and the passage of time. The Trojan War, in its blending of history and myth, reminds us that the past is not a fixed and immutable entity, but a fluid and evolving narrative shaped by those who tell its stories and those who listen. Beyond the captivating narratives and the debates over its historical veracity, the Trojan War offers valuable lessons that resonate across the chasm of centuries. It serves as a cautionary tale, reminding us of the cyclical nature of violence, the seductive power of beauty and desire, and the enduring consequences of choices made in the heat of passion or the pursuit of glory. The war itself, sparked by the abduction of Helen and fueled by the oaths sworn by her suitors, highlights the dangers of unchecked ambition, the seductive lure of power, and the devastating consequences of conflicts driven by pride and a thirst for vengeance. The sack of Troy, a brutal and chaotic affair, stands as a stark reminder of the savagery that can be unleashed in the wake of victory, the way that even the most disciplined armies can succumb to barbarity when the bonds of restraint are broken. The Trojan War also reminds us that even the greatest heroes are flawed individuals, subject to the same passions, weaknesses, and capacity for both good and evil that reside within us all. Achilles, the embodiment of strength and valor, is consumed by rage and grief, allowing his emotions to dictate his actions with devastating consequences. Agamemnon, the leader of the Greek forces, allows his pride and arrogance to cloud his judgment, leading to disunity among his ranks and ultimately his own tragic downfall. These timeless lessons, woven into the fabric of the Trojan War's narratives, serve as potent reminders of the complexities of human nature, the enduring power of our emotions, and the importance of tempering our actions with wisdom, compassion, and a recognition of the interconnectedness of all things. The Trojan War's legacy extends far beyond the battlefield and the pages of epic poetry. Its echoes reverberate through Western civilization, shaping our art, our literature, our understanding of history, and our very conception of ourselves. From the tragedies of Aeschylus and Euripides to the sculptures of ancient Greece and Rome, from the paintings of the Renaissance to the operas of the Romantic era, the Trojan War has provided a rich vein of inspiration for artists and thinkers throughout the ages. Its stories have been adapted, reinterpreted, and reimagined countless times, each generation finding new meaning and relevance in these timeless tales. The Trojan War also left an indelible mark on the development of Western literature. Homer's epic poems, with their vivid characters, compelling narratives, and exploration of universal themes, established a literary tradition that would influence writers for centuries to come. The Trojan War, in its myriad forms and interpretations, continues to be a source of inspiration for contemporary authors, poets, and playwrights, proving that these ancient stories still hold relevance and power in the modern world. The Trojan War's legacy, forged in bronze and blood, continues to shape our understanding of the past, our relationship with the present, and our hopes for the future. It stands as a testament to the enduring power of storytelling, the importance of remembering our shared history, and the timeless lessons that can be gleaned from even the most ancient of conflicts.